Truth is, I am Iron Man.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
What is going on? What are you doing?
To infinity and beyond!
This is the way.
The flux capacitor.
Was Star Wars the one with the little wizard boy?
Chewie, we're home.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
Welcome, fans, to United We Fan, the podcast. Uniting with me is my co-host, the most excellent, Bryan. Hey, Bryan.
Hey, everyone.
Woo. We hope you all enjoyed last week's episode where we spotlighted some of our favorite comedy TV characters. It was a hoot for us and made me want to binge some shows. On this week's episode, we are discussing some of our favorites from the world of Dr. Seuss. Fan thank yous. Shout out to Shannon O. We recently heard that we are one of the few podcasts that you listen to, so thank you for choosing us. We appreciate you. In Mark and Bryan's World News, we have some Funko news. Bryan, I heard and saw you sent me a cute picture, your recent Funko purchase. You want to tell everyone what you got?
Yeah, I purchased this one a little while ago, but it finally showed up this past weekend, and it is the supersized 10-inch version of the child from The Mandalorian, most commonly known as Baby Yoda. He is basically a life-size Funko of Baby Yoda. His ears have a wingspan about as wide as is natural for Baby Yoda. It is the best Funko I currently own. I love it.
And in my world, I luckily was able to find the Hawkeye edition to the Avengers Assemble Funko collection. So last week I mentioned I did order Thor and then finally was able to find Hawkeye. So the Avengers are almost assembled and ready to go. I'm excited for that. Bryan, I also heard that there was a disturbance in the Force with you recently.
Yeah, this past weekend was my daughter Ray. Her birthday is actually today, the day we're recording this. So she's 3 today. So happy birthday to Ray. But this past weekend, one of my coworkers, who's a member of the 501st Legion, which is a costuming group of Star Wars dark side characters specifically, was able to come and socially distance with us in his complete Darth Vader costume. And my 3-year-old daughter is obsessed with Darth Vader. She showed him her bedroom. She showed him her presents. She curtsied to him. It was the funnest birthday party I've ever had in my entire life.
Well, happy birthday, Ray. And God, I'm kind of jealous of her birthday. It sounds like a great time. And then also in recent news, Bill and Ted Face the Music. The preview trailer just came out.
No way.
I will admit I was already excited, but that preview has me even more excited. I am a fan of the first two films, as well as the sad to say R.I.P. Bill and Ted show that used to be at Halloween Horror Nights. So I'm ready to party on, friends, when that one comes out.
I can't say that I was expecting what we quite saw in that trailer, which is a good thing. I'm far more excited about that movie now. After seeing the trailer, I got to rewatch the others first. So,
yeah, it's a fun double feature to do for sure. Let's see. Now we're going to check out our local Facebook polls. I don't have any poll updates for you. I'm currently working on one on Facebook that deals with favorite Disney and Pixar villains. So I'll have results for that next week. Bryan, though, he did a Mount Rushmore that tied in with today's episode. Asked everyone their top 4 Dr. Seuss books. My answers were The Lorax is my favorite, followed by The Grinch, Green Eggs and Ham, then Oh, the Places You'll Go. Bryan, what ended up on your Mount Rushmore?
we had a little less overlap than I thought we were going to have, but I had Green Eggs and Ham and How the Grinch Stole Christmas both on mine. Horton Hatch's The Egg. I really like that one.
Yeah.
That one has a lot more life lessons in it, just like Dr. Seuss normally does. And then The Cat in the Hat rounded out my top 4. But of those 4, Green Eggs and Ham is definitely my personal favorite of the 4. There was a lot of call out for Fox in Socks. A lot of people like that one too. Walk It in My Pocket. That would have been my 5th one if Mount Rushmore had 5 on it. But those were some of the other ones. So
I didn't hear any wrong answers with any of those. Great choices. Well, as I mentioned earlier, tied in. So now on to this week's episode, and the reason I'm wearing my Cat in the Hat Converse shoes. We are discussing the Seussian world of Dr. Seuss. I'm a huge fan of Theodore Geisel's work, more popularly known as Dr. Seuss. One of my graduation gifts was Oh, the Places You'll Go, a graduation keepsake edition. And I even have hanging up in my room a artwork of the Lorax I found at one of the conventions I went to. Be maybe judged a little bit for this, but Dr. Seuss is actually my favorite poet as well. If you're a fan of Dr. Seuss and art, I highly recommend you check out The Art of Dr. Seuss wherever you can. You'll discover really creative and imaginative works of art inspired by Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss doesn't only live in art and books. There was also a Broadway musical titled Seussical the Musical. I saw a very well done local production of the Osceola Arts a couple of years ago. Bravo to all of them involved. For all of you who don't know, the musical is based on several stories from the world of Seuss. The show sadly didn't have a long run, and the critics were, for lack of a better word, not too kind to it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and if you're into Broadway shows, I say check out the soundtrack at least. Bryan, have you had a chance to get your musical on with this one?
Mark, you're worried about being judged that Dr. Seuss is your favorite poet. I'm worried about being judged that Dr. Seuss is my favorite author.
Oh,
those everybody that, especially those that are into Broadway, probably knew that this Seussical, the musical, was a thing. This is brand new news to me. I had no idea that I mean, Seussical to me, it sounds like something that they performed on a stage over at Universal Studios or something like that. But I'll definitely have to check it out. That's pretty interesting. But I did not know that even existed.
and I didn't know that favorite author. We're just getting some fun facts today. But Bryan, you mentioned Universal. Many of us have wished we could play in the world of Dr. Seuss. Luckily, we can over at Seuss Landing at Universal's Islands of Adventure. You have the fun rides, High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train Ride, Carousel, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, and the Cat in the Hat. Personally, Cat in the Hat and the Seuss Trolley are my favorite rides out of that bunch. Bryan, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, honestly, my favorite of the attractions over there is the One Fish, Two Fish, because it's basically, if you've never been there, it's the Dumbo ride, and it's mixed with water spraying at you, and if you listen to the words, you can avoid getting soaked. And of course, my kids like to go the other direction and get as wet as possible. The Cat in the Hat ride and the trolley ride, they frustrate me to the point just because they have really high height requirements for what the attractions are. So I think the people that would enjoy them the most, like my youngest daughter, can't even go on it because she's just not tall enough for it. The thrill factor is just not quite there. But it's that Seuss Landing there in general. You really step into the pages of a Dr. Seuss book. It's really cool. The candy shops and all that kind of stuff. It just looks right out of a Dr. Seuss book, which looks nothing like anything else people really ever get to see in their daily lives.
Yeah, my nieces also love to get their uncle wet on the fish ride, so I feel you on that one. Luckily, Universal, they didn't stop at rides. They have some cute shows there for the kids, like a story time, as well as my favorite holiday my favorite holiday show, The Grinchmas Show, based on the Jim Carrey film. I love it so much. I even had the honor of working it one year, so that was a great time for me. Bryan, have you had a chance to check out The Grinchmas Show?
I have seen Grinchmas. It's a really good production, especially for a quote unquote low budget production for what they're doing in a theme park. But I really enjoyed it. But the Grinch character meet and greet that they do there in Seuss Landing at Christmas time, it is the funnest. It is the funnest character meet and greet out there because he's just so interactive and he's not afraid to make fun of you. But you just can't take it too personally. So.
I totally agree there. He's usually over in the bookshop, and if you wanted to meet the Grinch, you're going to get a very interactive experience.
Max is there too, and I love Max.
Love Max. If anything, go for the dog. So I am a foodie. Fun fact for everyone, I love food whenever I go on trips. I can't wait to sample foods. Universal has their own Seuss-themed restaurants and food samplings. Over there, you have the green egg and ham tots. It's a favorite of mine. So good every time. They also have the Who hash that even comes in a cute little Who can. So if you're looking for a fun little souvenir as well as yummy food, recommend that. You can also eat at Circus McGurkus Cafe Stupendous. There's also a shop there for all you cotton candy fans or candy floss, wherever you're from. They have a build your own cotton candy where you can choose flavors and toppings. And I will admit, it will be bigger than you expect. So bring your sweet tooth. So good, all of it. Bryan, hopefully I didn't make you too hungry. And for all you fans out there listening, no, Universal didn't pay me to say all that stuff. I'm just a huge fan of it all, and it deserved the praise and shout out.
Yeah, you talk about being a foodie, Mark. I often get made fun of for eating like a 5-year-old, and I am proud of it. But who knew that toppings on cotton candy was even a thing? But that is, I'm a fan of that particular, and the green eggs and ham tots. I love those too. So
everything, yeah. The Universal actually introduced me to putting toppings on cotton candy. So thanks a lot, Universal, for opening my eyes and my stomach. We touched earlier on our Mount Rushmore of Dr. Seuss. So I think that's a pretty good place to start. Bryan and I are going to discuss our favorite books. And Bryan, you mentioned Green Eggs and Ham is your favorite book. Why is that?
yeah, I talk about Dr. Seuss being my favorite author. I do say some of that in jest. I am a little bit more well-read than it sounds like when I say that, but I love the lessons. I love the rhymes. I love the fact that you can make up words just to fit whatever you need. I just love everything that Dr. Seuss stands for. Green Eggs and Ham is my favorite one, and I don't think I'm alone in that. I would say that's probably his most popular book. The reason I love it the most, though, is with all three of my kids and the fourth one coming later this year, I know that I will do the same thing with that kid, that I sit down with them and I can bond with them over that. The words are easy enough that they can finish, even if they don't have a big vocabulary. They can finish the rhymes. They know what word comes next. They can kind of memorize it. It's just a really fun thing to bond with your kids over. And it's a good way to teach them, hey, just because the food looks weird doesn't mean that you can't eat it. And that's probably some advice I need to take myself, honestly. So, but the Green Eggs and Ham, it's kind of made a bit of a comeback lately because Netflix just released a 13-part series, and I know it's coming back for a season 2 as well. And I know what you're thinking. How do you make 13 animated episodes on a book that takes 6 minutes to read? But it has been a pretty popular show on Netflix. I need to give it another look, to be honest. It came out just the weekend before Disney Plus launched. So The Mandalorian and everything Disney Plus kind of took my attention when it first came out, and I haven't really gotten back to it. But the cast that it has of Michael Douglas and Adam Devine and Eddie Izzard and Keegan-Michael Key is the narrator, and Jeffrey Wright, Diane Keaton. It's a big money production that Netflix poured into with the animators over at Warner Brothers. They spent like $6.5 million an episode on this show, so it's quite the investment for Netflix. But it's been pretty popular, and they always come back to the basis of Sam I Am trying to get Guy I Am or Guy Am I think is his name in the show. They finally give that guy a name, but the central focus is getting him to try Green Eggs and Ham around all the other different adventures that are going on. But it's a show that I know has been really well received, and I think I just need to give it another look.
Yeah, I will admit, when I heard about the Netflix show, I was excited. I couldn't wait to watch it. It came up there, and the intro I dug. It caught me off guard, and I gave it 2 episodes, and it just was not grabbing me. I felt really disappointed by that. I had to keep coming back to it. I couldn't marathon it. I definitely love Michael Douglas as Guy Am I think that was perfect casting. I'll give the second season a open mind, but yeah, I will admit, as a Seuss fan, I was kind of disappointed. I did love the animation style. I'm glad they went very old school with that, so I love that approach.
Frame by frame animation style. We don't see a lot of that anymore.
No. So give it a shot. I may revisit it down the road. As for the book, as a kid, Green Eggs and Ham was actually my favorite book. And I remember the first time I heard the fun fact where Dr. Seuss's publisher made him a bet that he couldn't write a kid's book in 50 words or less. And so he wrote Green Eggs and Ham, and he won the bet. He wrote it in 50 words or less. So that's always an interesting fact. I can remember my dad and my mom reading me Green Eggs and Ham all the time. Definitely a classic, definitely a favorite. The simplicity in it is just so good. There's not a lot going on, and yet there's so much going on. And when you go back and read it, you realize there's so many layers to that book. So it's just something, me as an amateur writer, it's just something to study and appreciate. So I definitely have a good appreciation for that.
That's something I'm curious about. What they do with this Netflix show is, from the stuff that I have seen, they're clearly building a world of all these different characters, and they steer into the fantastical, just outrageous world of Dr. Seuss, the different colors and technologies and all that kind of stuff. I'm really curious where they're going to take it with that, or if they're going to take it into another show. It'd be interesting.
Who knows? Maybe I just need to give it another try and down the road with a fresh mind. My favorite book, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about my Mount Rushmore, is The Lorax. I have the Earth Day edition. I love The Lorax. It really didn't become my favorite until I was reading a copy of it. I just saw it and I was like, you know what? I want to read The Lorax. It's been a while. And I just fell in love with it all over again. I love the quote from it: unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. I just hugging the trees, loving the trees, wanting to protect the environment. I love every message about it. It doesn't come off forced or preachy or anything like that. The Lorax character just wants to talk to you and show you why you should appreciate nature more and understand it more. They made the animated movie. I think out of the animated movies, it's probably my favorite. Not my favorite Dr. Seuss movie. We'll get to that later, but it is my favorite animated movie. Danny DeVito as the Lorax, perfect casting. So if you haven't read the Lorax, give it a check out, especially on Earth Day. That way you're in the mood of loving nature. Read it. Check it out.
I'm the Lorax, guardian of the forest. I speak for the trees.
Yeah, that movie had quite the cast, and it was a big buildup. But I just think that's why it's hard to base these movies off of such short books. All things considered, look at the most recent animated How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The Grinch, they put every single talent they could into that movie, and it just didn't work. And I don't think that was just me. I think it didn't work for a whole lot of people. It's hard. And the Lorax did as good as they could do. Like you said, of the animated Dr. Seuss movies, it's probably the best one.
The newest animated Grinch movie I'm going to say, is my least favorite of the animated Dr. Seuss movies. Nothing against Benedict Cumberbatch as the Grinch. I actually enjoyed his casting, but the movie, I feel like, just forced so much and missed the mark. So the animated Grinch movie, the newest one, is my least favorite.
Kenan Thompson showing up every so often. I did enjoy his character in that movie.
Hey, who taught Mabel how to use the doorbell, man? That's awesome.
Kenan Thomas, hilarious guy. I had no problem with that. I think just overall, too many things. It tried to be very hip, but it forced trying to be hip. I just didn't feel it.
Yeah.
But anyways, check out the Lorax. Highly recommend it. Like I said, on Earth Day, if you're like, man, I want to do something Earth Day, there's an Earth Day edition of the Lorax made from recyclable material, and it's just a great thing. The Trumphella trees, talking about the environment and just caring more and showing the human impact on it in a non-forced, preachy way, in a good understanding way. So I love that one. Well, we talked a lot about Netflix shows and animated movies already. Let's find out, Brian. What is your favorite Dr. Seuss movie?
My favorite Dr. Seuss movie is easiest thing for me to answer, and that is the Jim Carrey, Ron Howard directed How the Grinch Stole Christmas live action. Jim Carrey's character that was the height of Jim Carrey. It came out in I think 2000, just a few years after just everything Jim Carrey was doing, The Mask and Dumb and Dumber, all that kind of stuff. You even get the liar liar call out when something crashes into him and he says, "Owie!" Jim Carrey he is the Grinch to me. He will always be the Grinch to me. He's the best Grinch. I love that movie. It is weird. There's a lot of odd stuff about it, just the way things look, but it looks like a Dr. Seuss book, and Jim Carrey as the Grinch was just perfect. I love that movie.
Hate, 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 double hate.
Loathe entirely.
I was actually going to talk about that movie as well as my favorite. Dr. Seuss How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey is easily my favorite. I watch it every year. I'll even watch it sometimes randomly throughout the year. Christmas in July, I'll put that one on. I don't understand. The film gets a lot of hate and a lot of pushback. I don't understand it. Now, if you want to talk about hate for the Mike Myers Cat in the Hat movie, I can talk about that all day. But for Jim Carrey's The Grinch, I love everything about the movie. Rick Baker, who did the makeup for that film, he also did the makeup for Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor, as well as An American Werewolf in London. He did the makeup for it and won an Oscar for it, rightfully so. I think his makeup is perfect. But of course, without Jim Carrey as the Grinch, I don't think the movie would have been as great as it is. So shout out to Jim Carrey. Shout out to Ron Howard for his approach. I loved that they used so many practical sets, which sadly, up until recently, you could visit at Universal Hollywood. They took that down. I mean, it had been there since 2000. So understandably, they took it away. But you just saw how big the sets were. They took up multiple sound stages. And when you think about that, that's how big that set was. So I love so much. You have Sir Anthony Hopkins as the narrator. What a perfect choice. I would love to hear Sir Anthony read The Grinch to me. I think that's just amazing. Jeffrey Tambor as the mayor of Whoville. Loved that casting right there. So
Yeah, Jeffrey Tambor, he makes me laugh whenever he's on the screen. I just always imagine it being George Bluth, just as the mayor of Whoville. But I think it's the hairstyles that is the only thing that really didn't land with me in that movie. I love the assault gun of Christmas lights when she can hang the Christmas lights on her house and she just blows the smoke out of the end. That always cracked me up. But like you said, the makeup, just the physical, everything within that movie, the sets, just all the costumes. I read that the Grinch fur and all that was individually sewed yak hair, and that's how they made him look so green. His eyes are just very green and yellow and just evil looking. They did something in this movie that not a lot of things do well. They give a backstory to something that's so beloved and so well known, without messing it up too much. Little baby Grinch was funny enough. But my favorite scene from that entire movie is the mailroom scene when he's tossing letters, pink slip, blackmail, like all this kind of stuff he's tossing into everybody.
Jury duty,
jury duty, blackmail, jury duty. Yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite scene from that movie. But it walked that fine line of the reverential view of what we know and then introducing something new. And I don't think anybody but Jim Carrey could have actually pulled it off.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to them. I think this film is a great example of, maybe I won't say great, is a really good example of expanding a smaller story. You know, The Grinch is a short story, and they expanded it. They gave Cindy Lou, played perfectly by Taylor Momsen, who, thank God, she wasn't just another annoying child actor. She did a great job as Cindy Lou. They gave her a backstory of why she wants to look into the meaning of Christmas. And I loved her song, the Faith Hill song of Where Are You Christmas? that is on my Spotify Christmas playlist. Obviously, you have the Jim Carrey, "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch," but I love the new song. But yeah, they expanded the story, and I think that's what the newest animated Grinch movie was lacking. I didn't like how they expanded it. I didn't like the direction they really took most of the things in. This one, like I said, great expansion on the story and everything. It wasn't just a shot for shot retelling of the book. You had to expand it, and I really do dig how they expanded it.
Yeah, and like you said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. But picking up Austin Powers and putting him in a cat costume and trying to put him in a kid's movie, that Cat in the Hat movie with Mike Myers, I wanted to like it. I really did, and it just, that's the complete opposite of what we're talking about with the Grinch. It just did not work.
For my WordPress site, I did a comparison article where I did a double feature. I watched The Grinch and then I watched Cat in the Hat. And I remember hearing some of the complaints with The Grinch. And then I went back and watched Cat in the Hat. And I said, "Did you watch Cat in the Hat? Your complaints for The Grinch, I don't quite agree with. But if you wanted to apply them to Cat in the Hat with Mike Myers, the adult humor in it, you could just, it just didn't work." Mike Myers, I think, was a good casting for the cat, but obviously I'm not an actor, and Mike Myers, if you're listening, thank you for listening. But if you are listening, I appreciate you as an actor, but I just think his take on the cat wasn't maybe the best take on it, and the film as a whole just missed a lot of what Dr. Seuss is. So
Austin Powers, if you are listening, I'm ready for Austin Powers 4. Or Mike Myers, if you're listening, I'm ready for Austin Powers 4.
Yeah, baby.
I got to update it a little bit for today's world, but I am ready. But we're not alone on this, Mark. Cat in the Hat on Rotten Tomatoes got 9%. and Grinch only got 50%. The audience scores, even on Grinch, is still a really low 56%. But with the Cat in the Hat, it was still much lower. But 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, so that makes us feel we're not alone.
People, go back, watch The Grinch. Maybe not right now. Do it in, like, if you celebrate Christmas in July, do it then, or wait till Christmas comes around. Give the Jim Carrey Grinch another try. And for all those who want to visit Islands of Adventure, check out The Grinchmas. Like I said, you can meet the Jim Carrey version of The Grinch. It is a great, fun experience for all ages. And then they also do the stage show, which has music from Mannheim Steamroller. The actors are always amazing. There's fun little holiday songs and dance numbers in it. It's great for all ages. Plus, Max the dog is in it.
I forgot about Mannheim Steamroller. That is a big draw for that. They do the soundtrack for that. Mannheim Steamroller. You may not know who they are, but if you hear their stuff, you'll know who they are.
Yeah, Universal put a lot of thought and care into that show. They didn't just roll out something. And then they even have the Who's walking around Whoville, so you can get into the holiday spirit with them. Speaking of which, with the Grinch, it didn't only win Best Makeup, it was also nominated for Best Art Direction and Costume Design. And when you go back and watch it, I think you'll see why. They didn't mess around with that production. And like I said, I'm glad they went for more practical effects and sets as opposed to the computer animated that we see nowadays, or CGI. Yeah.
No, not a lot of blue screen or green screen in that movie.
No. And Jim Carrey definitely committed to that role. So bravo, Jim Carrey.
And we haven't seen that level of Jim Carrey for a long time. We saw it in the most recent Sonic movie. But there were some years in there where he wasn't as committed to those goofy roles like quite the Jim Carrey we fell in love with. So it's nice to see him back.
Definitely. You for sure, if you are a fan of Jim Carrey from The Mask, Ace Ventura, Liar Liar, The Grinch needs to be something you watch to get that vintage, I'm going to put my whole body out there for humor, Jim Carrey. Well, that concludes our Seuss episode of United We Fan, the podcast. Thank you all for uniting with us. We hope you enjoyed our thoughts on Dr. Seuss as much as we enjoyed discussing it. In our next episode, we'll discuss a topic that comes from a galaxy far, far away. That's right, Star Wars. Bryan, I know you've been chomping at the bit to talk about some Star Wars.
I cannot wait to talk about Star Wars. There's a plenty of different ways we can go when talking about Star Wars, but we're going to start chronologically from the storyline. We're going to start talking about the original prequels, young Anakin Skywalker and his turn into, spoiler alert, Darth Vader.
That's right. Episodes 1, 2, and 3. We'll be discussing them next week's episode, including Jar Jar Binks. I said it.
Uh-oh.
Anyway,
Uh-oh.
I know, my bad.
You so crazy.
You're going to expect that episode next, and this is the way. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know with a rate or review. If you have any comments or questions we can answer, drop us a line. Bryan, tell our listeners how they can message the show and stay up to date on everything UWF.
Yeah, you can find our Instagram page at United We Fan Podcast. And then you can also send us an email. Anything you liked that we talked about, anything you didn't like that we talked about, or something you want us to talk about in the future, you can send us an email, unitedwefanpodcast@gmail.com.
Till we unite again, fans, here are some parting words from Dr. Seuss. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. Take care, and thank you all.
6:30, dinner with me. I can't cancel that again.